Forever. Dog.
Hello, and welcome to Outgrown, where we have guests on to discuss something from popular culture that they used to profoundly identify with and once thought would define them forever, but then eventually outgrew. This is a celebration of popular culture as it relates to personal identity.
My name is Tom Scharpling. I'm the co-host of Outgrown, along with
Julia Vickerman, and today we have with us James Urbaniak.
Hello.
He is an actor, writer, friend, amazing man. You've seen him in Difficult People, American Splendor, Oppenheimer, Meet the Fablemans. You've heard him on the
Just the
Venture
Fablemans.
Brothers.
Just the Fablemans. Meet the Fablemans is the sitcom spinoff, which we can't really talk about that right now.
Yeah.
I got it mixed up because it's Meet the Ricardos, right?
It's Being the Ricardos.
shit.
But I'm not in Being the Ricardos, but I saw it. I like Meet the Fablemans. That sounds.
Yeah. Meet the Fablemans. I think it's like Meet the Parents, Being the Ricardos, the Fablemans.
Exactly. It's a
But
common
yes.
mistake.
Running with scissors.
Running. Yes, exactly.
How are you today, James?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here as an early guest.
Very
My
exciting.
understanding.
We wouldn't want anybody else in that chair other than you. Now, you have something that when you were a kid meant a lot to you, and then you kind of outgrew it. And what would
Yes.
that? What are we going to talk about today?
Well, when you guys emailed me about this, and I said I'd love to do it, and I had to think about what the topic would be. And then I emailed you back and I said, well, I'm thinking either Star Wars, by which I mean the movie called Star Wars that was released in 1977, or Catholicism,
Okay.
having been raised a Catholic boy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Julia said, let's do Star Wars.
Yes. That's-
Nothing against Catholicism, but she just thought that would be a good one.
Yeah, I definitely don't have anything against
And-
Catholicism.
what could you
And-
possibly have against Catholicism?
Now, do you have Catholicism in your background?
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yes.
But anyway, so I thought Star Wars is great. But it occurred to me that Star Wars and Catholicism are both religions.
Mm-hmm.
They have their
Mhm.
saints, their
Absolutely.
sinners, I suppose, the
Yeah.
characters. And there are holy days of obligation where you
Yes.
have to go to the opening day of a
Of
new
a
Star
thing,
Wars
or May
joint.
4th now apparently is a holiday that we all need to honor.
Exactly.
It's very true. I mean, Tom has said this before. He's like, you got your new religions these days. It's Marvel, Star Wars,
Yeah.
Taylor Swift.
Exactly.
Take your pick.
Yeah.
I was very into the movie Star Wars.
Mhm.
Again, I referred to the movie called Star Wars. No, we didn't have an episode 4 crap back then.
Because this is one of the important distinctions with it. It really is. And you tell me, my
Yes.
recollection, because I was 8,
Mm-hmm.
is that something that's been lost to time is that this was just a movie, and
Exactly.
everything else was not built into it yet.
For anyone who is unfamiliar with the plot of Star Wars,
Yeah, uh-huh.
1977, director George Lucas.
1977, George Lucas film, retroactively retitled Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope.
Exactly.
So I'm just going to I'm going to give you a 2-sentence summary of this
Please.
movie because, like, honestly, it helped me to read a summary of what Star Wars was
Now,
about.
can I just quickly ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Have you seen Star Wars? And if so, when?
I have seen certain Star Wars films. I've actually never seen the first Star Wars.
Okay.
I love it. This is fantastic.
Okay, cool. I've seen the Ewok movie.
The Ewok one, you mean
Yes.
the
Endor? Return
Well,
to
the
Endor?
first big
Welcome
Ewok
to
one
Endor.
was, I
Meet
think-
Endor.
you mean Return of the Jedi?
Return of the Jedi is the
Meet
one that
the Ewoks.
Yeah, Meet the
Ewoks being
subtitled
the Ewoks.
Meet the Ewoks, episode 65.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so set a long time ago in a fictional galaxy ruled by the tyrannical Galactic Empire, the story focuses on a group of freedom fighters known as the Rebel Alliance, who aim to destroy the Empire's newest weapon, the Death Star. When the rebel leader, Princess Leia, is apprehended by the Empire, Luke Skywalker acquires stolen architectural plans of the Death Star and sets out to rescue her while learning the ways of a metaphysical power known as the Force from the Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi.
It's so different when you hear it broken down into just
I was like,
two or three sentences.
architectural
It's the elevator
plans?
pitch.
Yeah.
It's the elevator pitch. Right
It's the
there.
elevator pitch, but it's just like the idea that it's just like, I got the architectural plans.
Well, that's a very MacGuffin-oriented description,
sure.
to use a film geek term.
In like Hitchcock movies, it would be just the device to be like, oh, we got to
Right.
get that briefcase or
Sure.
the jewel
But
or
that's
whatever.
just an excuse to have movie stars do cool stuff and entertain us. No one really cares about the briefcase.
Sure.
No one really cares about the architectural plans. But
Yeah.
that's just the little engine of the plot.
I'll bet we got a lot of fans out there going, I only like Star Wars because of the architectural plans elements.
Architects, for example,
Architect,
would
yes.
definitely feel
Star
that way.
Wars inspired me to become an architect.
Once I saw those
Yeah.
plans for the
One-
Death Star.
Once I knew that a killing planet needed
Interesting that what
Blueprints.
is that description from, may I ask?
Wikipedia.
Because they don't actually mention Darth Vader in those
They also don't
sentences.
mention Yoda,
or Han
who
Solo.
I'm.
Well, Yoda shows up later. Yoda's not in Star Wars.
Yoda's not in the first one.
Whoa, really?
Yeah.
Lucas, 1977.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, they don't mention pairing up with Han Solo and is Chewbacca in this film?
Yes.
Chewbacca is in Star
Mhm.
Wars.
The thing that I remember was Star Wars came out. It blew everybody's minds, but there was like no plan for any for what it could have been beyond that. It was like all speculative. I remember being a kid and being just like, is Darth Vader a robot? They didn't answer everything with that first movie. Who were you when you first saw Star Wars? What was your life all about?
Yes.
How old were you? Where were you?
So I was right in the demo. I was 13.
Mm-hmm.
You would think, who's Star Wars? Who's right in the demo?
Yeah,
13-year-old boys.
absolutely.
So I was a 13-year-old boy in New Jersey
Mm-hmm.
going to middle school, Marlboro Middle School. I was part of the first graduating class of that school. It had just been built. I went to 6th and 7th grade at a different middle school.
Okay.
Then we went in there. And I was a suburban New Jersey boy.
Yeah.
My father was a public school teacher. He didn't teach in my county. He commuted to a different part of New Jersey. I didn't go to movies that much. Just to preface this, to give you
Okay.
a sense of context.
Mm-hmm.
Last night I looked up online for releases in 1977. And there's lots of movies from that year that I've seen since then.
Okay.
But the only movies that I remember seeing in theaters were, because
Okay.
it's a very short list.
This is amazing.
In 1977, this is all I saw in theaters. High Anxiety, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which came out after Star Wars,
Yes,
which was
late.
also an equally significant movie
Mhm.
for me. Capricorn 1, which was a 70s conspiracy film. You may recall this.
That the moon landing didn't happen.
Well, it's based on the moon landing not happening conspiracy, except it's about a Mars landing that doesn't.
okay.
That's
And
staged.
this stars O.J. Simpson, if I remember
Yes,
correctly.
O.J. Simpson and Elliot Gould
Yes.
and Sam Waterston.
Finally, the pairing everybody wanted. Elliot Gould, Sam Waterston.
Sam Water. I've had to look up the cast. I
Yeah.
remembered O.J.
Yeah,
I didn't remember, and at the time, I didn't know who Elliot Gould or Sam Waterston were.
sure.
I knew who O.J. Simpson was.
Of course, he was the guy running through the airport,
Exactly.
trying to get to. Do you know what that
Hertz?
is?
Hertz
Yeah,
commercials?
Yeah, the Hertz
Okay, yeah.
commercial.
Star Wars is the
Mhm.
other, and then that summer we went to the first time I was ever on an airplane. We took a trip to Disney World in Florida,
Okay,
and they showed Smokey and the Bandit on the plane.
Mm.
that would be the greatest plane ride in history.
And I remember it. And by the way, this was back in the day when they would literally pull a screen down
Mhm.
at the front of the cabin
Yeah.
and project a movie.
Oh yeah. Everybody's watching Smokey and the Bandit.
Everyone, you had to watch. And
Or-
I remember the credits started, and my dad, with interest,
Mhm.
said, when he saw the name in the credits, said to my mother, Jackie Gleason. He was like, oh, this flight just got a lot
Yeah.
better. There's a movie with Jackie
Yeah.
Gleason in it.
So
Yeah.
was your father was a film fan?
No, not necessarily. We didn't go to the movies that often.
Mhm.
And I didn't go to the movies that much. I never went on a date in high school.
Why?
Little personal fact here. But this is pre-high school. This is 8th grade.
Lay off.
So, God, I can't
us.
believe
Okay.
we'll edit that out, right?
Lay
I was
off
like, was that a-
guys
was that a
me.
We'll edit
choice?
that out.
Yeah.
I never went on a date in 8th grade as
Yeah.
well. And
Edit this part out, and neither do
my
I.
friend Dan, I'm just kidding. Leave it all in.
Wait,
my
leave that
friend-
in? No, I went on
I had
a
a
lot
couple of
dates.
best friends. My friend Dan was probably the one I went to the movies with if I went to the movies.
Okay.
But here's the thing. I can remember being in the theater of all of those films except Star Wars.
Okay.
But I know I saw it, and I think I saw it at least twice. But
Mhm.
before it came out, right before, in May of 1977, this is something I remember very, very well. It might be the first time I heard about the movie. I was in school
Mhm.
in 8th grade, and I was in Mrs. Bianca's class. She was a science teacher. She had blonde hair and glasses.
Mhm.
And there was a copy of Time magazine in the classroom for some reason. And I picked up this magazine, and there was a big feature about this movie that was about to come out called Star Wars.
Yeah.
And there were photos, and it was very exciting to me. I'm reading this article,
Mhm.
and it's publicity for the movie in Time magazine. There's an interview with George Lucas, and there are these color photos. I remember seeing the stormtroopers for the first time and thinking, that is cool.
Yeah.
And I was genuinely excited reading this. Like, I want to see this. And I never felt this way about movies.
Were you just a TV kid, like that kind of?
Oh, very much a TV kid.
Yeah.
Were you a science fiction fan?
No, not particularly. I was
Oh.
never really into that stuff. I know I seem like someone who would be into science fiction.
Well,
and
no, I
fantasy,
just
but I'm
imagine
not.
if you saw these photos of this movie. What
No,
was
but
it?
it
What was
wasn't-
it about the
It
imagery?
was just something about the design and just something about the way it looked and the way it was being written about in the article. And the one movie I was super into. Now you may remember this, Tom Scharpling.
Mhm.
It was either Channel 9 or Channel 11 every Thanksgiving would show King Kong.
Sure. Yeah.
I think it was WPIX, the 1933 King Kong. There was a local New York station that for some reason, King Kong has nothing to do with Thanksgiving. There's no Thanksgiving in the
No,
movie.
maybe not your Thanksgiving.
But yes, but I'm assuming that once one Thanksgiving they showed it and it probably got good ratings. And the next year they figured, let's just show that again. And then it became a weird tradition
Yeah.
where this New York station would play King Kong every Thanksgiving. So I would watch it every Thanksgiving as a kid, like 8, 9, 10 years old. And I loved that movie. I loved everything about it. And I know I was being drawn to the creativity of that film.
Sure. Like seeing something that doesn't exist.
And the 1933 animation of King Kong,
Yeah,
stop
the
motion.
Stop motion was,
I think I really responded to that. And there was something about just the creative energy of these pictures of Star Wars that I was really drawn to. And obviously it had some sort of an emotional kick to it because I remember this specific day of looking at Time magazine. I remember what classroom it was, who the
Wow.
teacher
Yeah,
was.
that's wild.
Then I went to see it and I don't remember who I saw it with.
Okay.
And
Well, you were
yesterday
so focused on the film.
I texted my sister Susan,
Okay.
who's 3 years younger than me, and I said, weird question. I explained the podcast. And I said, do you have any memory of seeing Star Wars when it came out? Did we go as a family? And she said, I think I saw it. She had a friend who lived across the street. I think I saw it with Rosario's family, but Dad drove us.
Uh-huh.
And I said, okay, I think I would have remembered that if I'd gone with the Ramiro family.
Okay.
So I don't remember who I saw it with, but it came out. I loved it. And then I became somewhat obsessed with it. I would buy a lot of literature. I would buy magazines. Starlog. By the way, my friend Dan, who I probably saw it with, later became a writer at Starlog.
Really? Starlog was,
Yeah,
there would be
explain.
like, there was Fangoria was for
I know
horror.
Fangoria.
Starlog was for sci-fi.
I see.
Like they were clearly sister publications.
But Star Wars, and then later that year, Close Encounters, it brought me to Starlog. I wasn't necessarily a science fiction fan before that. Then I used to draw cartoons. I would draw comics. When I was like 8 years old, I filled notebooks with the Peanuts ripoff that I made. And they were a series, like a whole
What was that
year's-
called?
It was called The Laughing Bunch.
This is, we're not talking about
I
Star Wars
really,
anymore.
really
Now we're talking about the Laughing Bunch.
Called
No.
The Laughing Bunch. And I would fill books with these 4-panel. It was complete Peanuts. It was about a bunch of kids and
Give
a
me
dog.
a name of a character from the Laughing Bunch.
So either the Charlie Brown or Linus character was named Blip,
Okay.
B-L-I-P, and he
Fantastic.
wore, much like Peanuts, they all wore the same clothes every day. to
Okay.
identify. And Blip wore a shirt and pants that were covered with circles or dots. I
Okay.
suppose.
Rather than this.
Was he
zigzag.
Was he a mopey fellow?
I don't remember what Blip's personality was. I think he might have been a bit of a Linus, a sort of thoughtful character.
Sure.
And then he had a mischievous dog, a la Snoopy.
Yeah.
I remember there was a strip where the kids were selling lemonade, and the dog ended up inside the jar.
I mean, that's
lemonade.
funny.
That's amazing.
It's not bad.
What was the
that's
dog's
good.
name?
I don't remember the dog's
I
name.
don't remember that. No, this is
If I really thought about it. But I love drawing cartoons.
Okay.
And I was pretty good. And I'm still actually pretty good. I currently draw like a very promising 18-year-old who needs further instruction at art school.
That's honestly my favorite kind of art. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see your work.
So then that reinvigorated my interest in drawing cartoons. And then I made Star Wars comics.
Oh, like
fiction.
fan
Wow, okay.
fiction?
Now, yes, but I don't remember any of the stories. I remember that I loved drawing the stormtroopers because they were super fun to draw. And then you fill in those dark eye parts with a pencil.
Yeah.
I think I drew it all in pencil.
Okay.
But I would get magazines. There's no computers back then, Julia Vickerman. It's all just
What?
analog magazines. And I would fill these papers with panels of these, of my own Star Wars like fanfic comics.
That's very cool.
That
Yeah.
year.
So you would say the impact that Star Wars had on you was did it light a creative fire under you?
Yes, I mean, I always had a certain creative fire. The Laughing Bunch,
Of course, the aforementioned
multi-book
yes,
comics,
of course,
of
yes.
my Peanuts ripoff. But that like reinvigorated a certain creative fire, 100%.
Okay.
Did you have which characters in Star Wars were you most excited about?
Well, they were different because there was the design element, the visual element was something that I really responded to. So even though the stormtroopers were the bad guys, they were my favorite things to draw because they were very detailed.
Were your comics about just stormtroopers? What
No,
their
but
lives
I
were
just
like?
remember that they would always show up because I liked drawing them.
Yeah.
So I'd find a reason for them to enter the
Yeah.
story.
Who couldn't you draw from the cast?
I probably couldn't draw Alec Guinness very well.
Okay.
I wasn't very good at realistic representation.
Okay.
I'm sure my Luke Skywalker probably looked like Blip from the Laughing Bunch, just a generic
Sure.
boy.
Of course, yeah. Of course, which Luke Skywalker kind of was, actually.
Yeah, he kind of was. Alec Guinness later became one of my favorite actors when I saw him in other things. But I think I really responded like a lot of kids did to the robots, to R2-D2 and C-3PO.
Did you enjoy Darth Vader?
I enjoyed Darth Vader. I liked all the characters a lot. I had no sense of acting back then, so I couldn't tell.
Really? You were not yet interested in acting?
Oh, well, I think I was, but I didn't know I was.
Okay.
Because I was drawn to, like I would be drawn, this is kind of a sidebar, but I think it's still thematically appropriate. I remember watching the Bob Newhart show in the 70s during its original run. He played a psychiatrist, and one of his patients was played by a character actor named Jack Riley, who died just a few years ago. Jack Riley played Mr. Carlin, who, if you remember the Bob Newhart show, he was the kind of most depressed, sort of misanthropic of his patients. He was this kind of middle-aged guy with dark hair who had this kind of deadpan quality. And I remember finding him really funny and really compelling as a kid. And it was only after he died a few years ago that I realized I was responding to his acting specifically.
Wow.
It was something about the way he underplayed and the way he managed his energy as this sort of deadpan middle-aged man. Like, why would a kid be compelled by a character like that? And I feel it was something about his acting that I was responding to before I knew that I was interested in that, which I think is interesting because I think we all are drawn to things as children that are later important to us as adults, but we don't quite know why we are.
You don't realize the hard wiring is being laid down.
I was about to use that exact phrase. There's a hard wiring that draws us to certain things.
You had a tiny, deadpan, middle-aged man living inside
and that
your
is
child
a
body.
sort of, and that kind of acting, that sort of less is more comedic acting is something I respond to very much.
And the idea of also being like the power of a character actor as well.
100%.
Like you're not the one who's in every scene, but somebody slides in, kills it.
And I really believe that Jack Riley was my first palpable acting influence.
Wow.
Oh,
when
that's
I think
very
about
cool.
it. But I don't remember thinking of being drawn to the acting in Star Wars in that way. I just liked the whole package.
Yeah.
Sure.
It seemed like it was very much the aesthetics of the film that excited you.
It was just the whole package.
Do you remember what it felt like after seeing the movie? All your friends, I'm assuming everybody was hyped about it more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah, people were not ashamed to be Star Wars fanatics.
No, this was the biggest. It
hot
was
shit.
Everybody loved it. It was just like it got to the point where it's like, how many times have you seen Star Wars?
My dad, who never went to the movies, brought the Romero kids to see it with my sister. I mean, come on. When did he ever do that?
Yeah.
Because he knew it was an event.
Yeah. No, it seemed like there was always the movies were always just like, I remember my grandparents being just like, they went and saw like The Sting.
Yes, that was another big one.
I think that might have been like the last movie they ever saw in a theater.
That was big. I remember when The Sting came out. But first of all, The Sting is a comedy set in the 30s, but it has a ragtime soundtrack.
Sure.
Which is kind of like making a movie set in the 1960s, and the soundtrack is old big band music. I mean, that music existed then, but it's not really.
Funny. Yeah, it's very funny.
But it works.
Yes.
Okay, wait. So these Romero kids, did you show them The Laughing Bunch?
No, I didn't really hang out with the Romero kids.
Okay, it was more your sister.
Yeah, because there was a girl, and she was my sister's age. I was friendly with them. But I think I probably drew The Laughing Bunch. I probably brought it to school.
So you did show it to an
I remember
audience.
kids looking at my comics.
Oh,
and
that's
I
exciting.
did definitely get a sense of
satisfaction.
Because I know I was a pretty good artist.
Yeah,
as
you
a
were
kid.
just leaning back and you were just waiting for those
And
smiles to appear on their
I drew a lot of
faces.
comics and cartoons. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Do you remember that post Star Wars thing when everybody saw it and then it's just like, well, what's next? What do you do with that?
Well,
Because now it is fan service is at such a degree where you know if people like a thing, they're going to make more of it. You would know that it's built into the deal now.
Right. Well, yeah, no, at the time it was just, that was great. That was Star Wars.
Yeah.
And as we're coming down from that, Mr. Steven Spielberg, my friend from Meet the Fablemans.
Of course, yes.
At the end of the year, I looked it up.
You and him are going to laugh about that so much. Steve, I did a podcast the other day.
That's right. Close Encounters comes out in November.
Yeah.
And then for me, the impact was equivalent.
Okay.
Equivalent.
Yes.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But Close Encounters is one movie. There's no Close Encounters franchise.
When was the second Star Wars film announced?
The second one came out about 3 years later.
Okay.
They were 3 years apart. Each one was 3 years apart. But this is what it felt like from my perspective was Star Wars is out. Everybody sees it. We're all saying like, what is this? Who was that? Because it was done in a very, if you think about the tradition of it, it was like a serial. It was like an old fashioned Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon thing where it just like, it happened and you kind of crumple it up and you throw it in the garbage can because you already watch it. It was not built to be an eternal product, to be a cultural thing that never went away. It was just kind of like it happened. But then as a kid, they would put out like, there'd be like a novel, like a novella.
Well, that was another thing. So I'm sure there was a novelization, which I bought and read.
Yeah.
I wasn't into toys.
Okay.
So I didn't have any figurines or toys or lunchboxes, but I liked buying stuff. I'm pretty sure I had a poster of the original art with Luke holding up the lightsaber with both hands.
Yep.
And I would kind of get my hands on books and magazines. But it ended, and then Close Encounters came out, and then I did the same thing. I would buy Starlog. I remember reading Starlog, and the writer was talking about the appearance of the mothership. And he said something to the effect of, and it's so magnificent and awesome, it brings us to tears. That's what the writer said. It brings us to tears. And I thought, that's heavy. I get it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I get how awe-inspiring that moment is.
One thing, I was younger. I loved the action figures, little Kenner action figures. They were so blown away by the demand on this stuff, but they just didn't have the stuff ready for the point. So that Christmas, they sold a box, like it was going to be like a carrying case with an like basically an IOU in it.
Exactly.
saying just
Here's
like,
where your toys
"Hey,
will go.
The toys, they're coming.
Yeah.
They're coming.
Yeah,
Like-
because I have seen a special about
Yeah.
the history of the Star Wars
Yeah.
toys
Like-
and all that. Which
Yeah.
is funny that they ended up making a similar mistake later with Baby Yoda,
Yeah, where they just like,
where they didn't make the toys fast enough and it didn't come out in time for the
yeah.
Christmas.
And that
rush.
Christmas was all that episode 9 garbage was in the stores, but no Baby Yoda.
No Baby
stuff.
Yodas. And
But-
it's it's interesting about the Star Wars toys is because I didn't see the films, but I had the toys.
Wow.
So like I had like the,
Because it was such a part of the culture.
Yeah, like I had, but I didn't know the story, so I would make up names for them and what they
Okay.
were about,
Do
and
you
like
remember any of the names you gave?
Blip, I think is what you.
Blip, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that no, I remember specifically one of them. My favorite one was from the cantina scene,
Yes.
where it's like has the long lips. It's like this long kind of tube with lips at the end. It's a
Mhm,
green.
with
It's
the
a
eyes
creature.
on top, like that.
Yeah, long legs, little
Mhm.
body, and I think in when Lucas did like the reimagining CG
Mhm.
stuff, it has like a full singing scene that's really uncomfortable to watch. But I named that character Broccoli Lips,
That's fabulous.
and Broccoli Lips lived in the Ewok treehouse.
Of course. And who are other non-Star Wars characters they might cross paths with?
They hung out with the Voltron crew
Sure.
and any random GI Joes, Snake
So I
Eyes
wander into the neighborhood.
that were like anything that was size appropriate.
Sure. They're all
Yeah.
hanging out together.
Exactly.
My generation GI Joes were like a foot long, so I'm before the miniature GI
Right.
Joe.
And
Yeah.
they had real beards.
I have seen pictures. It looks so cool. The flocking
And fuzzy
on the
hair
face.
too.
They had like
fuzzy
a
hair.
little.
It's very manly.
They were very manly. They were like Marlboro Man
Mhm.
action
I
figures.
was very into GI Joes.
hmm
And not the cartoon, that kind of came later.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was some 80s.
But the
stuff.
other piece of Star Wars merch that was very important to me, the first time I went to a record store
hmm
and bought an album myself
Okay.
was buying the Star Wars soundtrack, music by John Williams.
hmm
And it had, you opened it up and there were photographs.
Mhm.
There was a little booklet inside
Yeah.
the album of beautiful photos. And I played this record all the time. Again, this is the past. I don't know when it first shown on TV, but you didn't expect to see it on TV anytime soon. You couldn't rent a video. You saw it in the theater, and that was that.
It
Then
lived
the
on
run
in
was
your
over.
memory.
So then you could relive the energy and magic of the movie by listening to the music.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty amazing. Or like a Viewmaster thing or some kind of anything that just had any
Sure.
images from the thing would keep it alive in your head. It's kind of interesting to think about. The responsibility shifts to the kid to keep the plate spinning on this,
Yes.
because it's not just like, hey, I'm going to watch Star Wars every day, because you couldn't. It
Right.
just was. It was
Yeah.
not in the theater anymore. I mean, it ran in the theater all that
Yeah,
year.
back then, movies would run for like a year or whatever.
Yeah, but it's also you're a kid. You just can't go to the movies anytime you want. So the imagination, the burden of imagination, gift of imagination, fell to the kids.
Yes, I had a record player in my room,
Mhm.
and I would play that record. And I can remember the sense of excitement and energy I got from that record. My favorite sequence was the battle theme.
Mhm.
Ba 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 ba
Uh-huh.
ba
Yeah.
ba. Ba 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 ba. That was my favorite part.
Mhm.
Very exciting.
Do you still, if you
Sing
heard
that?
no, if you hear that, is there any part of you that still gets just like a little?
You get
Yes,
goosebumps.
a little tingle. Well,
Yeah.
I'm doing it right now. Yeah, I
It
do.
just still brings you
Yeah.
back on
No,
some.
no, exactly. It's
Yeah.
like turning up. But the funny thing is,
Mhm.
fast forward 3 years. I'm now in high school. I'm a junior.
Yeah.
Empire Strikes Back comes out. I don't see it.
Really?
Wow. Okay.
Just not interested.
So this is the
Wait, wait.
other this
Yeah.
is the other side of this, because we've been talking about this as if it's like
A tunnel.
like going like you're one way before you step into the tunnel. You go through the tunnel. That's the Star Wars experience.
Mhm.
But then
Then you come out a new person.
Now, I just want to preface this by saying no judgments here.
Well,
I know
course.
we're saying outgrown. I don't believe that people who are adults who are into Star Wars are immature.
no.
I just didn't
Never.
I just didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
It wasn't exciting to me. But that moment is still frozen in time. And I'm telling you, I can remember the classroom, the day I saw pictures in Time magazine. I remember the thrill I got from listening to the music, from seeing the movie. And that's real. But then my energy just went elsewhere. when
Yeah,
the next
what-
and I didn't see Empire Strikes Back till like years later, like on video at
Okay.
my friend's house.
Well, what had changed in your life that would make you uninterested entirely in
That's
the
a really
sequel?
good question.
Girls?
Music.
Girls were on my mind, but I wasn't dating girls back then. But music was definitely a thing. That's when I started getting into, and I'm sorry to use this phrase, but alternative culture.
Absolutely. No.
Stuff that Star Wars was not alternative.
No. Star
So back
Wars was
as-
the mainstream.
Star
I
Wars was
see.
mainstream. And so I was doing stuff like subscribing to the Village Voice and Mother Jones.
Wow.
I was discovering bands like Talking Heads
Mhm.
and
So
the
basically, you're
Ramones.
saying you were like too cool for Empire
But
Strikes
I don't
Back.
think I thought of myself that way. It wasn't like I don't remember feeling snobbish about, I'm not going to see the Empire Strikes Back.
Sure.
That's
yeah.
a snobbish boy talking.
Yes.
I just didn't care.
Mhm.
I just wasn't interested.
Yeah,
not
the
on
mo-
your radar.
the
It
It was
moment
not
had
on my,
passed.
I was aware of it because it was, again, a huge thing,
Yeah.
but that I was still feeling excitement and being thrilled by stuff and ideas. I remember I was reading Doonesbury by Gary Trudeau a lot back
course,
then, and I
yes.
bought the books. I was very into those. There was the way he created this universe, these characters, and these sort of novelistic stories that he would tell. I was very into that.
And some have said that Doonesbury is the laughing bunch for adults.
It was 100% the laughing one. And basically, Zonker was sort of the hippie boy, was essentially a dog.
Okay. So he was the unremembered dog character. So you're getting into music. Is it
Very much getting into music. That was a
Sure.
big part of it. And but again, it's a time where you had to kind of seek things out. You would read about something in the Village Voice, or someone would talk about it at school. You couldn't go home and press a button and hear a song.
Yeah.
You
And-
might, then you start figuring out where you can hear these. Public radio,
Yeah.
WBAI in New York, which was a great public radio station.
Absolutely. Yeah.
College radio, I started getting into. So I started getting into that kind of stuff. Yes, I guess the more sort of quote unquote underground stuff, that's where my excitement was. So suddenly a super mainstream thing like Empire, I was aware of it, but it wasn't a priority.
Sure.
Yeah.
Did it feel like you needed to distance yourself from these things and put it down now that you're past it, or were you just like you just put it in the corner and didn't think? 'Cause
No, I just
some
didn't pay
kids-
attention. No, I don't remember putting it down.
But you know how some kids
Oh, sure.
need to just like condemn the thing that meant so much to them because they need to break away from their previous.
I went
It's like
form.
teenagers
I-
hating their parents.
Yes,
Exactly,
I don't
yeah.
remember doing that to Star Wars, but I remember being kind of a sourpuss at family dinners and things.
Okay.
Like having a
Wow.
certain adolescent little rain cloud above me wherever I went,
course.
because that was how I presented myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going through a certain adolescent moodiness, but I honestly don't remember sneering at Star Wars.
Okay.
So then cut to more modern times. When you revisited the film as an adult, because I'm sure you have 2 children, so I'm sure did you show this film to your children?
You know, that's a really good question. I don't remember if I've shown them Star Wars. I think they've probably seen it. The other thing is, it's kind of hard to find Star Wars. And I also don't like the fact that Mr. Lucas went and tweaked it digitally.
Wait, you don't like those great changes he made?
Mhm.
I
No.
think you should. I think a movie made in 1977 should not be toyed with, and that whatever effects look quaint, that's part of the the joy of King Kong.
I agree.
And there's an energy to those period effects. They're great. They're not bad just because they're dated.
No, they're charming.
So that's a whole other issue.
Well,
But
one of the things that for me makes Star Wars, the first one, work is that it feels tactile.
100%. There is a homemade quality to Star
Yeah.
Wars.
It's like
1977.
when that final Death Star battle is happening and the X-wings are flying over the thing, it feels like you literally feel the space between things.
And Julia, you said what characters did you respond to? And it occurs to me now as you're describing that the greatest thrill were those models of spaceships flying around. That was just so exciting and energizing. And I know part of that energy was the awareness that this is a model that's being photographed. And the idea of and there's just something that has a different energy than this is a digital image.
Yeah.
It just does.
Yeah.
And I think that has a different energy on screen.
Absolutely.
And that's part of the same reason I love King Kong. Part of it was me thinking it'd be cool to make something like this. It'd be cool to make a movie with a model and make it look real.
It does. It seems a lot more accessible when you see these practical effects.
Yeah, and that was definitely part of what I was responding to was the thrill of enjoying the story, but also at the same time in my mind being aware this is a model that they're photographing and they're creating this effect. And that was very exciting to me.
Because when I was 13, it was Phantom Menace came out.
Yeah.
And like that is the opposite of tactile. It just felt so lifeless in a lot of ways.
For me, it feels like when a magician is doing a trick and you're like, I don't exactly know how they did this trick, but that's the practical side of things.
100%.
Because now you're using perspective, you're using all these tricks to pull off the final product. But when you get into the CG thing, it's just, it would be like if you knew
everyone knows how they do it.
Every magician's thing was just like, oh, well, it's just wires.
Yeah.
If you know one thing is the trick, it's not much of a trick.
Yeah, it does. It takes a lot of the magic out, in my opinion.
Now, what kind of movies were you getting into? You're getting more into music. Were there movies that were more appealing to you at that point in time?
That's interesting.
Because now we're talking 1980. Are you seeing Author, the Al Pacino movie?
I remember
Ordinary People.
I don't think I saw. I remember when Author came out, and I remember the reviews, and I remember Al Pacino saying, "My kids." That was at the time. It was. I guess it was considered a sort of Pacino doing a warm family comedy.
Yeah,
and people were a little bewildered by that.
Yeah, people didn't exactly want.
A year later, I will go to community college, and I befriended a young man named Anthony, who became a very good friend of mine. And Anthony was an interesting kid. He was very into old movies. He was into stuff from the 30s and the 40s. And we used to hang out, and this is what we did. He would put on some old movie from the 30s, and he would say, and he'd tell me the name of an old actor.
Sure.
And I was drawn to this stuff. I got super into it. And now that's a very important part of my life.
Sure. When you think, is there one movie that represents that era?
Transition?
Yeah.
It might very well be My Man Godfrey, which is, have you seen the original? It's a comedy from the 30s.
Yes.
It was remade in the 50s. The 30s one is just really funny. And I think that was an early one where I love the writing, I love the direction, and I love the acting. And I was just really drawn to it. But that's after high school.
Okay.
So at this time in like 80 when Empire came out, I think it was more music and it wasn't so much movies that I was super into. I think I started getting, when I was in high school, I did a play freshman year that I was in the chorus of. It was a musical.
Okay.
And then senior year, they did another musical where I had a character part and I got big laughs. And that was a very significant moment where I thought, oh,
Bingo.
I enjoy this. I like being on stage.
Wow. Okay.
And getting laughs.
So I was getting drawn to sort of the idea of acting. And I think when I look back, there were other people, but I think mostly on TV where I would see someone and be kind of fascinated by what they were doing, a la Jack Riley. So I was getting interested in that. But at that point, I wasn't so much into movies, really.
Sure.
But I would be a couple years later.
What gave you the bravery to participate in your first play?
Well, this is interesting because in elementary school, in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades, each of those teachers spent some time in class having us perform little skits and plays. For some reason, those 3 consecutive years in New Jersey at this elementary school, we were just sort of doing what we call dramatics. And we would write our own little skits and perform them in class. And I did this 3 years in a row. And I was always taken to be good. I had I love performing and I love writing these sketches. I also, I was into puppets as well. I had a lot of puppets at home. And so once I did a puppet sketch in school, and the premise of the sketch was it was a guy had bought a lottery ticket.
Okay.
And the other sock puppet is like at home, and he turns on the radio. And then I had my friend Roger be the radio announcer. And the joke was, the guy goes, and the winning lottery ticket is 5, 8, 3, 2, 1, 7, 2, 3. And this goes on for like a full minute.
Sure.
8, 9, 8, 1. And then I forget it. The joke might have been the last number didn't match.
Okay.
And then, by the way, later that
kind
year.
of thing that usually happens to Blip.
Classic Blip moment. And then later that year, but this is like the 3rd grade or something.
Sure.
And later that year, Roger and I got into a fight. And Roger said, and I did that stupid skit for you where I had to read all those numbers.
Oh, no.
He brought that up. As,
Wow.
He
You got
threw it
thrown
back
back
in
in
your
your face.
face.
That is.
but so I knew I loved doing that. I loved, and I was in 3rd grade. We were in it wasn't really a play. It was like a presentation. We all kind of read poems.
Okay.
And there was something about colors, and I was like the color blue. And I'm like, blue is the sky, and blue is the sea, blue is the blah, 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 blah. That was it. But I remember standing on stage, 3rd grade, and looking up, and I could see stage lights, and they were blue and red lights. And I was transfixed by this image of this row of blue and red stage lights for stage lighting. Very simple at an elementary school. And that was like a moment where time just stopped. And I that was an early moment where I was drawn to the literal technical aspects of the theater.
And standing on that stage.
And standing on a stage. And there was something significant about that. I've
That's
never
amazing.
forgotten that. It's because it's mundane. The story is I looked up and saw some lights. That's the story.
But
it's
it's not.
beautiful,
It's the moment where you felt at the risk of sounding grandiose. It's like it felt like home for you.
It
now.
felt like home, and there was something exciting about it.
Yeah, it switches something in your head.
It's exact. There was something exciting, but also, yes, kind of grounding about it as well.
Yeah.
And I know that was this nascent actor responding to the accoutrements of the theater
that's
before
amazing.
I knew what I was responding to. But I've always remembered it. So there were these early flashes of excitement that had to do with being on stage and performing. So I'd done that, and I'd been in a couple of elementary school plays that went well. There was actually a rather famous event where, I'll try to make this brief, but in 4th grade, there was a school play, and I was going to audition for it, and I was sick the day of the audition, so I was not cast. So the teacher said, well, you can be in the background. I'm a supernumerary. I'm a background guy. And it was a little science fiction play about a girl who had been kidnapped by aliens, brought to the moon or something. And then they get her back at the end. It was called Pandora's Perilous Predicament. It was like a kid's play from a kid's playbook.
Sure.
Anyway, I was really bummed out because I knew I would have gotten a big part if I'd been able to audition. So I was just sort of I was like a moon man in the background, you know. And then the teacher assigned understudies, and I understudied one of the main boy roles.
Yeah.
And then there was a kid named Lance who was it got to the point where she'd run out of sort of theatrical kids. So Lance was just some kid.
Yeah.
Poor
Kind of like
Lance.
wore his hair in his eyes. And I'm not saying he was a dumb kid. He didn't have the theatrical spark. He didn't seem like he.
Oh, Lance is
You
going
don't
to
have
walk
to
in
say
here and
it.
beat
Yeah.
you up. Dude, you can say Lance is stupid if you want.
No, he was. You wouldn't necessarily cast him in a play. It's
Sure,
just, his
okay.
energy didn't go there.
Okay,
But
got it.
and Lance, you'll understudy Mark.
Okay.
Well, the day of the play, Mark is not. It's a supporting role. Mark isn't in school. Oh, but the day before, I literally remember a kid saying to Lance, saying to Mark, don't be sick tomorrow because Lance is your understudy. It's kind of a joke among the kids.
Okay.
the day of the play, Mark doesn't show up. Now, this is the
Just
70s.
doesn't matter.
You can't, there's no cell phone. You
Yeah.
can't call his mom. I mean,
No.
I guess he could call his mom from
Could
the
be
office.
anywhere.
But
So.
we don't know what happened.
Yeah.
And I remember Lance looking at the script, like with a look of panic on his face.
Mm-hmm.
He hadn't memorized.
No.
I was so into being in the play that I knew all the lines. I
Wow.
inadvertently memorized the entire play.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
And I said to the teacher, well, I actually know the lines.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't the part I was understudying. And she said, do you want to go on in that part? And she turned to Lance and said, is that okay? And he nodded
Yes. The greatest,
with great
greatest day of
relief.
Lance's life.
And then I went on. So
Mhm.
so then I went on
Mhm.
and it went great. I was prompted once by a girl named Iris, who when I went up on a line and she whispered it to me, and I got through it. And then all these kids wrote in. Other kids from other classes drew pictures and sent them to our class, pictures of the play.
Mhm.
And there were all these pictures that said, Jimmy saves the day. That was like a motif. Because
Okay.
this had been announced
Yeah.
that I was jumping in at the last minute.
Sure.
So as you can imagine, that was a very significant event for me.
Oh,
yeah.
that's
in my
incredible.
That's
childhood.
huge.
And yet still, I wasn't thinking, oh, I'll grow up and be an actor.
Mhm.
It was just something that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
When did you stop going by Jimmy?
I was Jimmy as a kid. Then when I was like an adolescent, I became Jim. And I was Jim into my young adulthood. I moved to
Wow.
New York and I started
Mhm.
doing plays. I'd be billed as Jim Urbaniak. And then I went out with a woman who was a great person, but she had certain affectations.
Mhm.
And she had this she's from Chicago, but she had this kind of cultured voice. She'd spent time in Europe.
Mhm.
And it's my type, smart,
Of course.
good
Yeah.
looking,
Uh-huh.
the whole package.
Mhm.
But she would call me James because that was
Okay.
just her energy.
Sure.
Oh, James, let's go to the, And so then we had that ran its course
Mhm.
after a few years. And then I remember calling a friend of mine and saying, hey, it's Jim. Because I still thought of myself as Jim. And
Yeah.
my friend, who only knew me when I'd been with this person,
Okay.
Mm.
said, oh, you're Jim now? I said, I was always Jim. Karen called me James.
Yeah.
And then I hung up and I thought, I guess I am a James now. All right, I'm
Yeah.
James.
That's,
So
that's
then I
really
transitioned
funny.
to James.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's exciting to have a name that can be
Yeah.
transformed into
Yeah.
all these things.
And once I had a commercial gig
Mhm.
about in New York, so maybe in the early 2000s, and I thought, no one knows me here.
Mhm.
I'm going to try an experiment. I'm going to introduce myself as Jim, and I'm going to try Jim again, see how that feels.
Mhm.
And all day they were like, Jim, come to set, and I thought this is weird. I don't like it.
Yeah.
And then a year later, the same producers hired me again, and I showed up, and they're like, Jim, great to see you.
Uh huh.
And I thought,
Yeah.
I'm
No,
Jim
no,
to these.
no, no.
I'm not Jim anymore.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
like it.
No. No,
So
that's
yeah,
it.
I've become. But the fact is, I am a Jim.
Mhm.
I'm just a Jersey Shore rat who went to community college. That's a Jim.
That's a Jim.
I
But
never knew because
outside, you're a
you
James.
both went
but
to
I have a
community
James.
college.
I have
Yeah.
a James quality.
Yes.
I don't know. I just land a certain way to people. and
Sure. Yeah. No, I get that.
Yeah,
Um,
I never realized until today that you all both went to community college
Yeah.
in New Jersey.
Which one did
Jersey.
you go to?
I went to Middlesex Community College.
I went to Brookdale
Yeah.
in Monmouth County.
Yes, it was.
Were you aware of those
Oh,
schools?
the rivalry was.
The rivalry.
We
Brookdale
hated-
was
we hated
considered the
those
largest
Brookdale
community
kids.
college in New Jersey.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know much about the other ones.
No, nobody knew. You just went to this
You went-
thing. You drove
There
to
wasn't a
school.
lot of school spirit
Yeah, you drove
at
to
the
school.
community
was
college.
No school spirit. Literally, in terms of school spirit, zero.
I got to say though, when I went to Brookdale, that's when I started doing play after play.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I met some friends, one of whom I saw the other day. One of my oldest friends is a guy I met at Brookdale.
Wow.
Who's now a writer-producer in L.A. It was a great time. But yes, you would drive there. You paid very little money to go
Mm-hmm.
for a semester. And
They
I got a
were-
lot out of it.
Yeah, the requirements were a check and a pencil.
Exactly. That was it. Didn't matter what your
You just
grades were.
needed-
Because I'd become, while I was getting into underground culture
Mm-hmm.
and Doonesbury and all
Yeah,
this stuff, I
sure.
was paying more attention to that than my studies.
Of course, that's how it generally.
And then I was
happens.
like failing
Mhm.
English, which is crazy
It
because
should
I loved
be-
English.
Yeah, right up your alley.
You know, I just wasn't putting in the work.
Mhm.
And for some reason, my parents just weren't on top of that. I guess they assumed I was doing better than I was.
Sure.
So like junior year, I really fucked up. And that's a very important year.
It's because
if
you were
wanna go to
giving off
college.
James energy to everybody else.
Yeah, I seem like a James.
Yeah.
But I'm totally gymming it. all
Jim,
over the place.
Jim is the one failing English.
Jim's failing English.
Yeah. Now,
So that's why I went to Brookdale. The idea was to transfer to another school, but then
Sure.
other things happened and I kind of just stopped.
Yeah.
now just to go back to the Star Wars part
Please,
of things.
the theme of the
Yeah, 'cause-
So
episode.
Yeah, because I have another question as
Yeah.
well.
No, please, you do.
So now that Star Wars has become what it is, a religion, like what are
Exactly.
your thoughts on it now? Like, do you find that strange?
No, I don't find it strange. I'm just still not into it. And now and then, if a group of people are going, like the last one, I don't know, if there's a movie out and I'm visiting my in-laws at Christmas, we might go to see the Star Wars movie.
Okay.
The last one I saw is the one where Han Solo dies. He falls off the thing.
Sure.
Which one was that?
7.
All right.
Ep-
That was a
episode
few years
7.
ago, right?
Spoiler alert,
It's like a-
people.
Yeah, spoiler. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I'm going to say this. You had your chance to find out about.
That's
I
the
guess
last. And then I think a few years ago, for cultural literacy, I thought, well, let me watch The Phantom Menace, the one that everyone hates.
Yeah.
And then I watched it and I thought, yeah, I see why everybody hates it.
Yeah.
I get it.
You
And I
didn't-
haven't seen Star Wars, the original, in 15 years or something. I honestly don't remember.
Okay.
Like, it's been a long time.
I have a copy of the original one on a disc, on a hard drive, that like pre-tinkering, because he's removed them from circulation.
Right.
Fascinating.
It is like, it's not like, hey, you can go buy the original one, but here's the new and improved one. It's just like, no, he strikes those from existence.
No, it's weird.
It's very strange. I believe, I might be wrong on this, that he doesn't give the print to the Library of Congress because he didn't want the original one being the movie of record.
I don't want to tell the creator of the thing what to think, but he really should let the original out there.
Yeah, that's a bit odd. It seems very insecure.
But I'll tell
yeah.
you how disassociated I am from the Star Wars universe. A few years ago, I think I was on Twitter and someone was talking about Star Wars, and some of these opinions came up. Like I was like, yeah, I don't. It's not that important to me. I don't care. And someone said, "You're in the canon," and I said, "What are you talking about?" And then they reminded me that I'm a voice in a Star Wars video game, The Old Republic.
Oh, wow.
I actually have a recurring character in that.
All right.
And at this moment, I had forgotten
Oh my God.
that fact. So
Yeah.
I'm in the canon.
You
because
are.
They're a nerd. I have a name.
Yes.
I'm an android.
What's the character's name?
I had to Google it because I knew this would come up because I
Sure.
had no idea.
Uh-huh.
So I had to look up my own credits this morning because I knew we would have this discussion.
Yeah. Okay.
His name is C2D4.
Oh, okay.
And as you can imagine, he's a somewhat persnickety James Urbaniak. Oh, well, we've got to
Sure.
go get those things.
He's a James. He's not a
Oh,
Jim.
wait, he's
Yeah.
a James.
Yeah, this is not a Jim.
No,
Rock
no, I don't
or a
get cast as
droid.
James. I get cast
No.
as James guys mostly.
This is so funny that
So at
you
that
are-
moment, this is a humble brag. It's not a brag. This is often incorrectly described. A lot of people do brags, and a humble brag is couch self-deprecating.
Yes, exactly. Like, yes, a humble brag is a whole other thing.
I've done so many voiceovers that I can't remember. I was in a star. It's too much for my that's a humble brag.
Yeah. Yes.
A brag
exactly.
would be, hey, I'm a voice in the Star Wars video game.
Yeah.
A humble brag is I've done so many of these first of all, I don't play games.
Yeah.
This is another thing,
Yeah.
slightly generational, but I don't play video games. It's just,
Okay.
I didn't grow up with it. My children do. I'll try. I don't know what I'm doing. I just don't do it. So that's part of it. But yeah, I had momentarily forgotten that I was in the Star Wars
Sure.
universe.
So there's a list.
Draw your own
somewhere.
conclusions.
The list says Harrison Ford, Billy D.
And then
Williams,
number
Just
1262,
keep going down the list.
C2D4.
this James Urbaniak.
Because I'm still,
Yeah.
that's anything Star Wars related is canon. So I am in the.
So have you been pitching The Laughing Bunch as
Yeah.
a film or limited series?
Yes, we're going. I have a meeting at Netflix on Monday.
I feel like-
we're trying to get Michael Cera for Blip.
Okay.
He's a little
Michael
old.
Cera, yeah. Well, you can do the Irishman de-aging makeup.
Yeah.
By the way, I have one more anecdote that I
Yeah.
want to tell you on
Oh,
the theme
please.
of Star Wars. So long story short, I become an actor. I moved to New York, and in the 90s, I'm on the audition circuit, and I do a lot of I'm on the audition circuit for voiceovers and commercials. And there's a bunch of guys that I see all the time, character actors.
Sure.
You're sort of in the circuit, and then you all know each other. And there's a great camaraderie in these waiting rooms. Someone's going to get this commercial. Hi, Tom. How's it going? And you sort of see the same guys week to week. So this is circa maybe 1999. I'm in a casting office in New York. I sign in. You walk in, you put your name on a list, and you sit in the waiting area, and then you see guys that you know. It's my circuit, so it's mostly guys. And I hear a guy talking about, I hear his voice, and this guy is talking about a play he was in on Broadway. And he's got a real kind of actor laddie quality. He's like, he's got this kind of squeaky voice. Like, we ran for a couple months, but I don't know, we didn't get big audiences, and people didn't really come, but it was a great play. And I'm thinking, who is this actor, son of a bitch, who I don't know, talking about his Broadway show?
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, there's a new guy in town talking about his and I go over to the sign-in sheet, and literally underneath my name, maybe a couple spots, it says Mark Hamill.
Wow.
And I turn my head, and like a movie, there's a zoom, and there he is in a leather jacket, looking great but middle-aged, is Luke fucking Skywalker.
Wow.
Dolly zoom to me, looking at him.
Yeah.
And then oh my God, it's that voice. 3PO?
Yeah.
Where is he?
Yeah.
A princess? Anyway, we're on Broadway for a month, and nobody came. And I was, you know what it's like in showbiz? You've experienced this. If you're a working person in showbiz, now and then you'll meet super famous people. It's not even a brag. It happens sometimes. It just happens.
Sure.
I worked in Meet the Fablemans, I met Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have a sense of, we're peers at this. Usually it's at a thing where the playing field is level. So I'm like doing a movie with Spielberg. I'm relaxed because I'm like, oh, he's my director and I'm his actor, and there's a sense of mutual
win a contest to
respect.
Get the job.
I'm not fawning over him or anything. But my heart started to go. I'm like starstruck, and I'm like, there's nothing I can say. I can't go up to him and go, I was really into your movie when I was 13 years old.
Yeah, it's exciting to see. I mean, because I ran into him at one time at Cartoon Network because he did voices on series, and it's like, even though I know Star Wars is just part of the DNA of the Western world. So it's like, even not being a super fan, I was like, shaking.
Yeah.
Like, oh
then this was a voiceover for an animated bubblegum commercial. Might have been like Bubblicious or Bubble Yum. It was dinosaurs. We were dinosaurs eating bubblegum. And then I thought, wait a minute, Mark Hamill is signing in and to audition for this. And I like, the playing field has been leveled. We are on this. I guess I'm in the show now. Yeah. I'm going up against Luke Skywalker. I didn't get it, so I hope he did.
Yeah. So you just realized Hamill's got to read for this stuff. Now it's you versus him.
Now it's me versus him.
Yes. Have you ever been up against him in anything else?
No. Well, not to my knowledge.
Just bubblegum dinosaurs.
Just the bubblegum dinosaur. Yeah. I don't know who got it. But that was So it all came back, though, at that moment. Me, who didn't care about The Empire Strikes Back and was not drawn to the Star Wars universe, got a genuine thrill. The only other time I've met a lot of famous people. Again, it's just a fact. And the only other time I was that starstruck was when I met Eric Idle from Monty Python. The first, and since then I'd met a couple other Python guys, but and that was probably about 15 years ago. And I was like, and again, it was because I discovered Python in middle school. Peter Adragna from middle school told me about this show called Monty Python that was showing on PBS. I remember Peter was describing an episode to me as if it was a narrative story. So,
not just something.
So first, a guy walks in and there's a penguin on a TV, and then a lady is vacuuming and a gorilla walks. And I'm like, okay, this sounds interesting.
Yeah.
But I think that was part of it, is that, as you know, is so informative, especially to our generation.
Sure.
So much like Mark Hamill, it was also the age I was, because it was the same age when I first discovered this thing. Python, I remained a lifelong fan of. Star Wars, not so much.
Yeah.
But that was, because I know that's why I was so excited and goosebumpy when I saw Mark Hamill in a casting office, and when I met Eric Idle, whereas when I met Tom Cruise one time, I was like, hey, it's Tom Cruise. That's cool.
Yeah.
Didn't get super excited.
No.
It's nice.
Well,
He was nice.
they
Yeah.
represent so
This is-
much of you and your identity and how you became the way you are.
100%. Because that's very true. Because even though I didn't become a lifelong fan of Star Wars, I was very energized by the creative
Yeah.
energy of that movie. And the same thing with Python. That was a whole kind of mind-blowing thing about
Absolutely.
comedy and performance and
It like
writing.
breaks your brain open a little bit.
It does kind of break your brain open. And so that's why those were still very significant. So there's a warm place in my heart for the Star Wars.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I don't. I can't keep up. I don't even remember who Boba Fett is.
Yeah, you
Like,
literally
he's like-
were in a video game. And you don't remember
Oh,
it.
James.
I know
got
he's
some
a
work to
guy.
do. We got some work to do.
No, I know.
I think you escaped.
I also never that year that I was super into it. I never dressed up. I didn't dress up as Luke Skywalker for Halloween.
You don't really like costumes very much.
Well, when I was a kid, I loved Halloween.
Really?
I was thrilled by Halloween. I loved dressing up, and I would often
Where
make
did
my
that
own
go?
costumes.
Where did that go, James?
Well, I became an actor, and I wear costumes for work. Thank you.
What was your best costume as a kid?
Once and not because I was super into his films, he was just iconic. I dressed as Charlie Chaplin,
Okay.
and I made my own costume. I put on a mustache and a big one of my dad's old coats, and I don't know. I must have found something that looked like a derby. I don't remember, but that was the idea. I dressed like
It
that.
kind of needs to be a derby to
You got to
realize
do
Charlie
that, and I was
Chaplin.
probably around 9 or something.
Wow.
And I
It's
remember
very
walking.
on brand for you.
I remember it was, and again, it was like I was drawn to a silent film, but I wasn't like I thought of myself. But I probably seen like Charlie Chaplin on PBS once or twice. But you just knew he was just famous, like Elvis.
Yeah.
And he didn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
He was just someone I'd always heard my whole life, and if he would be in cartoons, like it was just an iconic image.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. But I remember walking down the sidewalk, and I heard a boy younger than me, a little boy, turn and see me, and he said to his friend, "He looks like a man.
Whoa,
He looks like a man."
Yeah, that would.
And I thought I did it. I nailed it.
There you go.
I look like a man.
Oh, man.
That would have set me on a different path. If someone had at
He
any
recognized
point
that I
told
was a
me
boy.
I looked like a man.
He recognized that I was a boy in a
Yeah.
costume, and he didn't know Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah.
It was like,
It just-
I had a mustache. I'm wearing like a suit.
Amazing.
He looks like a man. I'm like, nailed it.
Mhm.
I don't think I did the nailed the gesture,
No, you would have been
the
way ahead of
elbow
your
thing. I don't think we
time.
did that back then.
No,
But
you didn't. No one did.
Well, thank God for that
it
child.
was probably
Yeah.
like a smile
Mhm.
and a little, you fucking right, I look like a man. I'm Charlie Chaplin.
Now, give me some Snickers.
Give me some Snickers.
Yeah.
Well, James, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for
Wow,
joining
thank you.
us
This
today.
is very enjoyable.
no, this is so much fun, and it was so.
I've learned a lot about you and even
Yeah.
more about Star Wars.
Yeah, you're gonna go watch all of them.
Oh,
now?
and I had lots of dates in high
Sure
school. That
am.
was, I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I was
I
me too.
misremembered.
I was the king of the school.
Oh, me too. I was
You
just
were the
doing that
man
to make
of
you
the
feel.
school.
I was
I
trying
was
to fit
the
in
man.
with James.
I dated like a man.
Yeah, you dated like a Jim.
Yes.
Yes,
Like a real flocked-faced G.I. Joe.
yeah. Well, this is so much fun. Thank you, James.
Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Yeah, and we'll be back with another episode
Incredible.
of Outgrown.
See y'all later.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.